I wanted to make a little video about language. Um, Now, as you may or may not know, I want to make this country a more direct democracy, and kind of hard to effectively have a direct democracy if people don't understand each other or don't effectively communicate with one another. So I wanted to talk about certain aspects of our language and the things that I think it would be helpful for people in general to be more aware of when it comes to communication. Um, so back about 50 or so years ago, I don't even remember exactly when, there were these three guys, Waslowitz, Bevan, and Jackson, who were communication theorists, and they came out with a very profound statement saying you cannot not communicate. Yes, that does seem like it is a double negative, but it's a double negative with intent. So, right from the get-go, you're going to be like, of course, I can not communicate. I just don't have to talk to you. Well, if you don't talk to somebody, that doesn't mean you're not communicating with them. You actually are communicating the idea that you don't want to talk to them. If I don't know you, you're halfway around the world somewhere, and you and I have never met, well, I'm still communicating the idea that I don't know you and that you and I have never met. So things like this are very important to be aware of. And this profound thought really extends to other things in our existence, because there are things that define our existence. So one of the big ones is about being political. Okay, you cannot not be political. And like I said before in a previous video, I'm a gamer, and one of the things you hear a lot in the gaming industry is that people don't want games to be political, and what they really mean by that is gamers, like myself included, don't want people's ideologies or political ideologies shoved in their face and down their throat. And this is not really a thing to gamers in general. This is a thing to that really is kind of how any average person would feel. But I think maybe at one point I'll have to talk about how gaming has been used, has been made into this political weapon, really kind of against our society. But that'll be for another video, another time. So, along with you cannot not be political, you cannot not be religious. Okay, even if you don't believe in anything, well then you believe that you believe in nothing. You cannot not be racial or even a little bit of a eugenicist, because you're practicing a very mild, minusculely mild form of eugenics when you decide who you want to bump uglies with. So really the issue becomes not so much that whether a person is something or isn't something, because everybody has a stance, even if they have no stance. Not having a stance is also a stance. It just I don't want to say this. The difference is whether or not somebody is practicing a more overtly imposing form of whatever that is. So, being overtly, imposingly political, okay, that is something you can or cannot be, because these are quantitative modifiers. But things like that are not, requires a lot of words. It may sound very verbose. And one thing, personally, I tend to be verbose when I explain things or describe things, because I want to make sure that my ideas are thoroughly communicated. Brevity may be the soul of wit, but but only if it's effective at conveying the entire message. If it's not effective at conveying the entire message and with accuracy, then it fails. And really, we don't have words in our English language that can briefly and effectively communicate ideas of not being of whether or not a person is overt or passive, or imposing or passive, or more overt or internal, or whatever. So that brings me to a tenet of language, and that is the idea of denotation versus connotation. So denotation is the word, the meaning of a word as its utility, as its function. Connotation is how that word changes with respect to the context that it's used in, and the feelings of the person using the word. Connotation is a very slippery slope because it makes the definition of words more subjective rather than objective. And this is where many issues in communication, and actually a lot of disagreements and whatnot arise. And it can really actually cause a lot of problems when two people are using the same words but have two different meanings in their head of what the word means. Now, I try to be more denotative in how I speak and how I talk to other people, but I find out every day that sometimes I've been using connotative definitions to words without realizing it. One example of this is the use of the word communism. Now, communism people refer to as an authoritarian regime, which is not what communism means. You can't take the root word and add a suffix to it and then abandon the meaning of the root word. A commune is a place where people come together and work together through agreement, one agreement or another, for their personal well-being and sustenance. And adding the suffix ism to it just means the practice of that. So, the word itself, there's nothing inherently good or bad about it. People just have the stigma about it because, all right, let's face it, rich people don't like the idea of not being able to take everything they can from you. Some rich people, I gotta say. And that'll be my eugenicist statement is how, the people that who pursue excessive wealth and power, I call them the amoeba class because they don't do anything. They just take resources and destroy them. So, yeah, pay attention to the idea of connotation and denotation when you're communicating with people. And when somebody says something that may seem, and the other thing too about connotation is, before I forget, connotation is where the idea of many slurs and derogatory words come into play. Like somebody was saying, oh, it's, because I said something was retarded. And this person said, oh, that's a derogatory term. I said, no, it's not. It's a utility. To retard something is to yeah, I'm stumbling on the definition of a word. Isn't that great? No, but to retard something means to undo the progress that it's made, or to work in the opposite of the desired direction. Okay, so it's a utility. Words are utility. And if we're going to have more effective and more civil communication, it may be a good idea for us as people to look at these things and how we view language and how we view words. And when we talk to people, not be so hasty to judge them based on the words they use or how they say things, and get to know the people before we actually make a comment on whether or not we agree with their semantics or definitions of the words or not. So there's a little public service announcement for you guys. I hope you found something useful out of this and get a better understanding of just language in general from this, and hopefully it helps more prosperous communications in your future.